Have you ever wanted something so bad that you end up sabotaging yourself, where the pressure makes you so scared that you just can't seem to start anywhere? You research, you plan, you do everything, you make all these notes, you analyze everything, you go on AI, you go on these websites, but in the end, you're just at the same spot and you end up just hating the process. That's exactly where I was a month ago. I mean, I've been away from the channel for a while, purely because I just wasn't enjoying the process, not of filming, the whole fitness thing in general. I've done this in the past where obviously, I think I've spoken about this, we've documented this a bit, where it comes time to bulk and my systems just fall apart. And this time I think I've actually found the solution, and I think this will be really, really helpful for you guys as well. And here are the few things that held me back for a month, stopped my progress completely, and almost destroyed my will to train. For me, it boiled down to three, you can say, toxic mindsets. Number one being just over-analyzing. I was consuming so much information from so many different sources, and there was so much conflicting advice from for training, for eating and everything like that in the first place. And I ultimately boiled it down to having no clear path, and I was just paralyzed. So when you do something like this where you have so much choice, you end up doing nothing. And then what you do end up doing is none of those things, but something that entirely will sabotage yourself. And the second thing was the perfection trap. Everything had to be perfect, otherwise I messed up, right? So with the diet is a great example, which is something that's been really, really helpful that I've been able to fix now. Shout out to Ross Newham. I've actually talked to him, and then he's now coaching me as well. So that's where I got some of this advice from, which was really, really helpful. So essentially, in my diet plan, I normally, the way I do things, the way I recommend to people is put your diet plan or meal plan in your app, any app of choice, and then you stick to it, right? Sounds easy, you're motivated, everything's good, just stick to it, stick to the program. However, that kind of thinking for me, what it did was it built where, for example, in my plan, it says an apple, and if I had a banana instead, or let's say something that was similar calories, but it wasn't an apple, in my head now I failed, right? I've ruined today anyway. And then you start questioning yourself. So because of that perfectionism mindset, I started questioning myself to say, basically, are you really in it? If you were really about this life, you would have eaten that apple, you wouldn't have swapped it out for something else. And that just completely destroyed everything. So my diet plan for when I was cutting, which I am cutting now, I've lost 1.5 kilos in a week. This was a really successful week last week. And essentially I let myself go a bit, You don't want to hold on to yourself and strangle yourself by giving yourself that many rigid rules. So essentially what I did was basically, if there was a meal there that I thought, I don't really want to eat this right now, rather than just forcing myself to eat it and then feel something inside as in empty and I want to go on a binge now because that itch hasn't been scratched, I just literally replaced that meal with something else that was similar calories, may not have been on my plan. However, I'm still achieving my goals, basically. More on that later. And the third thing, the worst thing of all, rather than being factually based, so looking at my food numbers, training numbers, stats, overall like that, because this whole thing, right, is based on obviously results and your record, and you look into your logbooks and all that stuff. Rather than being or sort of making an assumption or conclusion based on facts, I would go rather than on those little minute things, like I said, oh, I haven't eaten that properly, or I don't really want to go on a walk. That means I must be really lazy. I'm not cut out for this. Things of that nature. So like I said, I strangulated myself by giving myself this false image of what I need to appease to. And the biggest thing that led to was the fact that I just basically told myself, oh, I'll never get there. I'll never be able to reach my results or train properly because I built this whole huge picture when in reality I just need to get going. Fitness is simple, not easy. So the minute you make it complicated, where there's already so many challenges that come with it in general over time, you shoot yourself in the foot. Now, obviously, I've had success in the past with weight cuts and everything. This time it was a big shock that I couldn't do it. And I just realized it takes you so long to diet. And then when you have a diet break or when you're bulking, because of that rigid mindset. So I've been someone in the past that's been able to actually stick to a rigid diet, complete pinpoint on that program, the diet plan that I've had for 6 months at a time, 3 months at a time. The first initial cut I did do from 120 kilos to down to 63 kilos. Oh no, 68 kilos. That was done purely for 8 months, and I ate the exact same thing every single day. But there's so far your willpower can take you. And if someone says you can do half the work and get the same pay, you would do it. And I just didn't understand that. And what I did this was blanket over it and make it like a all one and done, has to be this way, hammer to the wall approach, when it doesn't have to be that way. So the biggest thing I can say about this, what's really helped, was at first it's a bit shaky, okay? Because what I was trying to do was, learn this new way of eating, as per se. So when I did speak to Ross, I said, listen, I've messed up this week. This day, I was rigid for a couple of days and I just couldn't do it. I'm so sorry. Because I thought honesty would be the best way to get the right solution. You can't be lying. If you have a coach, you paid that person money, you're interested in their services or whatever, you want to make sure you adhere properly. So I told him exactly what happened, and that was probably the best thing that could ever happen to me. It's not a moral, it's not a personal attack on yourself if you admit that you didn't eat properly. Where do you go from there? If you go to a doctor and you don't tell him you're ill, he's just going to send you back home. So, you've got to accept the fact that you made a mistake, things aren't working properly, in order to then take those steps forward. So what I did was exactly that. Told him I messed up, and then we had a discussion about this, saying, you know what, in the fat loss phase, initially it's hard because you've built some habits, bad habits, and over time you've eaten some rubbish, and you're going through the motions there. And then when it comes time to starting to fix things, it can be quite difficult. So allow yourself that flexibility whereas by that same example I gave you, instead of an apple, you want a banana one day, have a banana one day. If you've got a bowl of oats that you need to eat, who cares? Just have a wrap this time with some hash browns, maybe some fish fingers, as long as you're in those calories. Because what that will do is, that will be the quickest way to net you some results. Now, hear me out. 2,000 calories of complete crap, 2,000 calories of complete amazing good food, obviously macros, everything perfect. They both will result in either fat loss or fat gain, depending on what your expenditure and all is. However, the whole foods and everything will obviously give you a better physique. There's no question about it. You'll feel better, the energy will be much better, your skin, your health overall, your mood, your will to train, your sleep, everything will be much better. However, at the start, when things are so difficult, when you're trying to get that initial fat loss, or to get you kick-started, for example, it's probably a good idea to give yourself a bit of flexibility. So it's not a case you're going to go on a complete binge. Now, this advice for someone that has like any sort of disordered eating or anything like that, please, I think you may look for help elsewhere. But this is for the common person that is obviously goes on a binge because the diet's not satisfying. So for them, when you're weight cutting, go into those calories, and maybe a few meals, maybe after your training, or maybe the one that's early in the morning, swap it for something else that you feel like. Now, it may not be as satiating. However, if you've given yourself the food that you wanted and the hunger that comes with it, you'll take it on. It'll be easier to suffer for hunger that you made a conscious choice of doing. Okay, now give that a few days or a week or so. What you will start noticing is, because the results will start coming slowly but surely, those frequent meals that you changed will slowly then stop. It's happening to me now, which is always the case when anyone cuts weight. It's happened to me in the past as well. When you start seeing some success there, on the scale, in the mirror, in the gym, you will start thinking, okay, so I can have this meal, I don't really want this, however, this will give me better results. That's how it starts. The following day, you'll actually want that better meal. You'll actually want to eat much better, because now in your life, the priority for eating better or being more fit or more in shape is jumped up a little bit. Whereas before it was more probably taste based, or you just want to chill, you want to relax. Because you've seen those initial results, your brain sends you those signals. And to the point now where, I'm sure if any of you guys have cut weight before, you reach a point where like I say, you're not very food motivated anymore. You don't feel as hungry as much. You make better food choices, and now your life revolves around more so training, going out, walking, drinking good water, having more nutritious meals, and that's what you're looking to do for that kickstart. So giving yourself a blanket or like a rigid system, especially to begin with, when you have built bad habits, is just asking for failure. So when we really think we need to make the perfect choice, it's not the case. What we need to do is make the right choice at that time for your long-term goals, okay? So now what you can do, conclusion, right? What you can do is, number one, for the paralysis by analysis sort of situation, everything works for everyone. Think of any approach that you've seen, right? Which one do you align with more inside, like with the personality type? And then just stick to it, okay? Because a bad plan will probably, a bad training plan as well, will probably net you more results than a perfect, meticulously made plan that you just can't follow, or that you just won't do, or you won't get up in the morning for. So pick something that you enjoy. The holes in that plan or program can be fixed later, but the more important thing is to get going, get moving, get started somewhere. And the perfectionist side of things, don't accept everything it's going to be perfect. Nothing is perfect. You see two flowers growing, you see, two fruits, they don't look the same. There's nothing is perfect in the world, and you just have to embrace that, okay? Your diet will not look like 100% clean. You're not Chris Bumstead, unfortunately. You're not anyone, you're not Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're just a general dude trying to get in really, really good shape, and you're in the best physique of your life. So especially early on, Embrace that it's not going to be perfect and that you're working towards something that eventually will be perfect, but right now it's not going to be. And each day at a time, you use that as a building block. And obviously when you look back, you've made good results. And please talk to yourself like you would talk to your friend, okay? If you feel like you're being hard on yourself, give yourself a bit of a gap, a bit of a break. You know, so in some cases I would say toughen up a little bit. You don't want to completely be like, oh, I deserve the cake because I've had a hard day. Not like that. I'm saying if you look at the facts and you ignore them and you start sort of giving yourself a bit of heat, that's not good. You know, don't want to speak to yourself negatively. You're thinking, this went wrong. I am, or I can fix this thing. This is what I will do going forward, and that's what needs to be done, and you go ahead and do it. You don't want to, I'm not saying be nice to yourself as in give yourself loads of treats and candies. I'm saying give yourself a break in terms of you went to the gym, didn't have a good session, that's all it is. It doesn't mean anything more. It doesn't mean you're crap or you're not made for anything, you're not built for this, you can't do this, you can't do that. Just get going, put that in the books, put it in your app. Next week or next whenever you revisit that session, just do better. And how can you do better? Eating better, sleeping better, being kind to yourself and doing the right thing day in, day out. And now a bit about myself. I'm going on a bit of a journey now. So I've lost 1.5 kilos already in the last week, and I've lost a kilo before that as well. So it's about, I think personally, if everything goes well, 7 to 8 weeks, I'm going to be probably hitting about 70 kilos or so. So it'd be nice to have you guys on board and join me on this cut. I'm currently 76 kilograms. And if you did enjoy this, like, share, comment and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.